Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, happy 2024. Terry, could you please call me?
Oh, I'd be happy to. Frost. Not here. No.
Here.
Ben Yosef.
Here.
Chow.
Here.
Gorson.
Here.
Moon's here. Tyre.
Here.
Oh, we're 6 tonight. Okay.
Do we have any correspondence?
None that I see.
All right, and our student activities report is not happening tonight, so do we have any visitor statements?
A lot of visitors.
Okay.
Lots of
So,
curriculum.
our curriculum.
All right. Well, welcome to 2024, and we're beginning tonight with our curriculum team presentation. And I'll give Justin an opportunity to introduce his team here in 1 minute while they queue themselves up. But as you know, each month we do curriculum team presentations around our social emotional learning goal. And this evening we have representatives from our multilingual learning division here. And so Justin, I'll let you introduce your team.
All right. Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. Great to see everyone tonight. Is it the wrong? So we're actually doing Spanish. This was from last year. It was wonderful.
I got so excited I took the Spanish. It's ML. Maybe.
Nancy was here last year. So I'll introduce everyone. That's Nancy is the team leader, Nancy O'Malley. To Nancy's left is Christina Mueller. And then we have Mia Karras, who is new to Stevenson this year. We're very excited to have Mia.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And Mia, yes, Mia actually, I met Mia for the first time on a trip to Spain when she was a junior, I think between junior and senior year, joining us. Sam and I were chaperoning on that trip. Yeah. So we're excited to have Mia back as a teacher. We
Have you gotten used to calling him Sam yet, by the way?
It's still Mr. P though.
Yeah, sort of, it's sort of like, hey.
Yeah, it's still in here,
And then Mr. Fisk.
Yeah,
There's no just. Not yet.
I keep trying. We have Chris Beatty and then Sam Field. Wonderful team. And there they are in that picture there, along with their entire division. Wonderful group. This was taken at the beginning of this year. So they actually tasked me with this slide. They put my name on the bottom right. So just to situate where this course is in our sequence, this is Spanish 3-4. It receives accelerated credit. It's situated just before Spanish 5, which is AP Spanish Language and Culture. Students can alternatively take Advanced Spanish Conversation and Culture. This course, if you go back a few years, would primarily have been a sophomore course, but as our K-8 center schools have diversified their offerings, we actually have a lot of freshmen who come into this course as well. So it's probably a full section full of freshmen in this course each and every year, and those students will often continue right on to AP as sophomores. And we have every grade level represented, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. All right. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, so just thinking about where we were now, looking at our most recent student voice survey data, we can see that valuing of subject and classroom belonging are our least % favorable scores, but we've actually done a lot of work over recent years to increase these scores. We focus a lot on student connection, acceptance, empathy. For example, they're consistently looking at the target culture, looking at similarities and differences, comparing to their own culture, engaging in conversations with peers, learning about their culture. So we've seen these scores grow a lot. I actually just looked it up. Our valuing of subject score in 2017 was 49%, and our classroom belonging was 58%. So we've grown so much in that area already, so we wanted to push ourselves and see what else we could look at. So we saw that our third least favorable score is classroom learning strategies, and we saw it's kind of stagnant. And these are around how students use strategies to manage their own learning in class or processes So for example, before you started a challenging project, how often do you think that's the best way to approach it? And our lowest percent score there is how confident are you that you can choose an effective strategy to get your work for this class done well. So anecdotally, we say that our students are really stressed. They're accelerated kids. They want to get that A, and sometimes they get defeated when they don't. And so we saw a lot of times, absenteeism on assessment days or students level changing even though they were placed appropriately. So we wanted to decrease student stress and anxiety when taking performance-based assessments, decrease student absenteeism on assessment days, and increase student agency and involvement in their learning and growth. So we thought of the best way to do that was in one area of our rubric, or in our gradebook, for the interpersonal mode, we made a portfolio. So a collection of student work, of different conversations over the unit, reflecting on their areas of strength and growth, developing strategies to improve before they go on to the next opportunity so they can have that chance to show growth. All right, and then Chris will explain a little bit more about what that looks like.
So I've got a bit of kind of the then and now of kind of the evolution of how we assess students in the interpersonal mode. Historically, students would have one opportunity, sometimes two, depending on the length of a unit, to demonstrate their skills in the standard. And it'd be a culminating event, typically at the midpoint or towards the end of the unit, depending on if we had one or two assessments. And it was kind of like a standard process. It was a 3 to 5 minute long conversation, usually depending on the student level. At our level, by the end of the year, they're typically speaking for around 5 minutes. After the assessments, the students did a self-reflection. They got feedback from their teachers. A score was associated with that, usually a conversation with the student. Then students would typically have an opportunity to re-perform, like a second opportunity, a second assessment event to try and improve their score. What ended up happening though is the emphasis, at least from a student's perspective, was on the score at the end and not necessarily the language that they were producing and then the growth they were going through over the course of the unit or their whole trajectory as a student of Spanish. So this is kind of like the before calendar, just focusing on the interpersonal modes. There'd be other assessments throughout the unit, but this was your event. This is kind of game day at the end of the unit in a traditional sense, not really out of the ordinary, but let's say you're in a food unit and you are tasked with a prompt to debate your partner, what is better, a potato chip or a French fry? You better be ready to go on, this is probably January or February 12th, like that's the day. And if you can't do it by that day, you're kind of behind the 8 ball and kind of playing catch up to try to re-perform, improve your score. And again, we saw absenteeism from a lot of students, stress levels were high. And then the process of re-performing really never got at the true nature of the spirit of learning a language and growing and improving over time. And so as a team, like Nancy had outlined, what we looked at was, well, what if we kind of spread the opportunities throughout the unit? Why do we have to decide which one counts as their score? Students should have some kind of agency in terms of deciding like, hey, this is my, for the most part, second language, for some students, third language. Sometimes you have bad days and certain topics are easier to talk about than others. So what's the big deal if we offer them a variety of opportunities with prompts that are associated with our curriculum? At the end of the unit, they choose. Still maintaining the spirit of the assessment. It's not that prompts are shared ahead of time. Still expecting 3 to 5 minutes of conversation from the students. The self-reflection process was relatively similar. However, now it extended to a degree because students had far more time to consider their work. Anecdotally, from our perspective, the way that they go about assessing their own work and reflecting on it and just like informally conversing about it has changed quite significantly in favor of this system. So before I pass it off to Christina, this is kind of the evolution of what a unit calendar would look like. Looks like they have far more assessments, but in all reality, they're opportunities. And the students have become very accustomed to this. So if on the 18th of January, you're having a rough day or you're absent or you're out for some reason, it's not going to negatively affect you in the interpersonal standard. One thing that we then as teachers kind of evolved with was how are we actually building our units? If we're going to have 4 different opportunities for students, how does this cause us to rethink our curriculum as a whole, the resources we're using to stimulate the students in their conversations, and can we boil things down to unit sub-themes to help them be successful and also to make it more actually stimulating for the students, for our student population.
All right, thanks, Chris. So as you see here, like Chris mentioned, we divided up our curriculum into subunits, which was really great because students were able to dive into our units at a deeper level by talking about different subtopics. Because we were giving students the responsibility of choosing their best performance, we wanted to make sure that they were receiving quality feedback throughout this process. So we kind of have a 3-layer cake here. We have the self-reflection, we have peer feedback, and then we have teacher feedback that was provided for a simulated speaking conversation assessment. And that mimicked the AP exam for the simulated conversations. They were still able to get that experience and that exposure. We do this so that students can get feedback along that learning process, but also by the time it gets to the day where they have to choose their best performance, they have been given feedback multiple times by multiple people on different conversations, and hopefully that gives them a clear picture of which conversation demonstrates their highest proficiency. So with that, the big tool that we use for students, or to help students choose what their best recording is this reflection tool right here. So students get a copy of this. It's just a double-sheeted paper. And so I'm gonna kind of zoom in and explain the 3 big parts of this document. So the first thing that we have students do is students first choose what their best recording is, and they circle the prompt and then just state, why did I choose this recording? Why is it my best one? The second thing they do is they actually transcribe and correct their language. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to actually watch students while they're transcribing, because you'll see them so intently with their headphones on and they're writing, and then sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, like I use that so well. Or sometimes you'll see students be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I made that error. And then sometimes you'll even have students get up and be like, Sonora, I need another one. I'm not doing this one anymore. I'm gonna do my other one because then I realized I did that on the other one. So they're really involved in analyzing the work that they did in these conversations and their proficiency. And the third step of the reflection process is this part right here. So you see 4 categories of our rubric: language function, text type, communication strategies, and language control. And to us as a team, this is our most empowering step for students. In a traditional assessment model, normally this is the teacher's job. However, in this step, students are able to not only self-assess, but they can self-evaluate using this rubric, therefore making it such an empowering step in their learning process and their assessment process, which gives them more ownership in our classroom.
All right. So the portfolio process is not simply just a teacher-designed calendar with our pacing and our sub-themes and our rubrics that we print out for them, all nice and awesome, that they engage with. We also do seek student feedback within the process. So this data right here is pulled from a Google form survey that we gave students at the end of semester 1, just to assess, where they feel they're at in the portfolio model, and if they truly understand how that model, is working and functioning in the classroom, and how that compares to their previous experiences with the interpersonal standard in their other courses that may have taken. So this exact question that we asked them, part of the survey, was overall, what is your perception of the portfolio process for this mode? Which was, the 4 conversations versus the 1. And 79.5 students, stated that they feel positively about the portfolio model. They like it better than the previous model of just the 1 assessment date. So that data showed us that the students are, not only understanding the process and all that we aim for it to offer them, but also gives them the opportunity to truly engage in a more reflective learning process where assessment is integrated well into instruction, lessening their anxiety about arguably the most high anxiety standard that we, assess students on. So here are some quotes from students, right? So we're not making this up. Got all these students. we all divided and conquered, all 6 of us, we all wrote one of them. So we have the bolded and underlined words, which are really notable. I won't read everything, but I like the first one especially. Some days are just bad days. It gives me options because my outside extracurriculars have a tendency, they can interfere with the academic process, and if we want students to be balanced, it's important to note that they are human beings outside the classroom. They can build multiple ideas to improve outside of class. We can be part of our grade and basically choose what will help us. Very teenage to use the word basically there, I love it. Reflecting, improving our Spanish communication and speaking skills, which that bottom middle is important too, because it, it's not like going for a grade always. It's truthfully at the essence improving our communication skills, which is, the backbone of why we are language teachers and they're language students in the first place. And we can see ourselves grow. So we have student choice, we have growth, we have agency, and we have true, improvement of the skills, not just, oh man, I'm gonna re-perform because I got an A. You're welcome.
So how has this impacted us as teachers and how we're developing curriculum? As was mentioned before with the calendar, it used to be that we had just one time at the end of a unit in which kids had to really kind of demonstrate their ability. And oftentimes we would rack our brains in terms of what does that assessment look like to make sure that it's encompassing the breadth of everything we've learned. And having switched to a portfolio model, being able to develop sub-themes, we've realized that, hey, we can break this down in a very manageable way for students. And as mentioned before, students can really dive in more curiously, more intently into an area that they feel passionate about. Another thing that's happened as a result of that is they're paying more attention to what's actually happening with the resources. So in the past, it could be kids might have dialed it down at the beginning of a unit and then dialed it back up towards the end, realizing I've got an assessment coming up, I really need to pay attention. Here it's something where students, every time we have a resource, they realize this is gonna be a factor within the next conversation that we're gonna have. So in terms of what it means for us in developing the resources, in lesson planning, in building up what it means to have those interpersonal communication strategies and skills and opportunities, it's been really beneficial throughout. In regards to the Portrait of a Patriot and what we hope from students, this portfolio model has helped us in regards to having them understand what it means to self-reflect. So when in terms of pacing for us and how we are doing this, our students have always had conversations. What we really switched here is the idea of when are we recording and when. It's not as though when you see that calendar with one assessment that they weren't speaking other days. They were always speaking, and it was just us kind of switching things a little bit so that way we realized let's capture them at these different moments. And as a result, all these different points here have been something that we've been able to leverage with them. That self-reflection in terms of them being more cognizant of where they're currently at and what they need to do. The idea of how it is they're working with peers and communicating with one another, how they can gracefully say, Mia, this is your not best work and here's the reason why, and having to use language from the class to really explain that. And then justifying it to us, right? So the idea of evidence-based learning, the conversations have really switched to students saying to us, instead of what's my grade here is what do I need to show in the next one, or what can I do to make up this particular part because they've self-identified on the rubric, or they've worked with their peers, or they've internalized it so much that they realize what needs to happen in that next step. Moving forward though, I think as a team, we're set up beautifully in terms of the willingness to want to iterate. So we've naturally been tweaking things. So what we've done one unit, we've talked with one another, thought about what's worked, what hasn't worked, and we've been adjusting. So it's continuing to work on that, realizing that perfection doesn't exist, but that pursuit should always be there, right? Us tweaking things so we're improving. The next is expanding it. So we've talked about interpersonal, and that's something that, as Mia stated, is probably the most stressful things for students because they're having to put themselves out there. But we have other modes of communication that we assess kids on. And the idea of building a vertically articulated portfolio where students are going from one class to another, having similar experiences, where maybe they start off with interpersonal in Spanish 3, let's say, or sorry, 2, 3X, and then the next year they roll in interpersonal with presentational so that they're having a sense that they're not going from one portfolio to a different portfolio model in different skills, but they're able to then see longitudinally over years how they've progressed throughout. So being that our teams are highly collaborative, we haven't gotten there yet, but we're in the right step to go towards that. And the ultimate goal would be to have just a portfolio for all the skills, right? So at this moment, we've latched on to interpersonal. I believe other teams are doing presentational. The beautiful thing about our programming here is that because we're highly collaborative and we have people on different teams, you don't have to mandate that one team does one thing. People naturally are on different teams and they want to do what's successful in other places. And so we end up getting to the right place faster as a result. But that's the ultimate goal we have. So thank you. I know there's a lot that we stated, and I'm sure there's plenty of questions. Yes?
Question. You were talking about the part of the process where the students kind of do their own analysis of their work and provide input as to how they feel they've done, what they've accomplished, and where they are in the process. How do you all, or how do teachers evaluate that and validate what it is the student has produced?
So their own personal self-reflection?
Well, if you go back to, like the old school days, the teacher would just grade the student more directly.
I think
Either in a conversation or a written piece of work or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's not happening. So how do the teachers get involved in validating that evaluation process with the students?
So I think a lot of it comes from modeling beforehand what the expectations are for the assessment, showing kids exemplars of like, this is what it means to be successful in this assessment. But as Christina mentioned, the transcription is really powerful because in the end, we're asking students to show us the evidence. So within that conversation, in that transcription, they've stated everything they've written down. So if a student misidentifies their strength, and we come back to them and we say, well, you believe that you were strong in this area here, but I'm not finding that within your transcript. Like, where are you seeing that you're successful in this area? And I think it's teaching kids to be a little more forthright and honest with themselves, but having that as the evidence.
Something else that we do as well, sorry to
No,
cut in,
this is
Sam.
no.
So something else we do as well is once we as teachers have graded all of their interpersonal speakings, it is an in-class activity to go over the feedback. So we pass back the transcriptions, and something really powerful that we do is we actually do not post the score in IRC right away because we really want the students to internalize that feedback. We know our students love that A, and so we know that if they just see the score, they're just gonna just shut down or they're not really going to pay attention to the areas of strength or areas of growth. So what a lot of us do is we'll have them analyze any comments that the teacher has made, and then we ask them, based on this feedback, where do you think you have scored after your teacher has marked it up? And it's really interesting because 95% of the time, students are very accurate. They're like, oh man, I thought this one was really good, but I didn't even realize that I was doing this wrong, or I didn't even realize I didn't have strings of sentences. So that's where kind of that interaction piece comes in.
Sure,
with
to
feedback.
that exact point, do you find that kids are still, or some of them at least, are still a little bit uncomfortable not being able to say, well, you're doing kind of B work now, or you're doing A work now, that they want that more definite grade? Is that, or are they really kind of changing their mindset?
They do.
No, I mean, but have they changed their mindset
I
to
think
really accomplishing mastery and not driving for the grades?
I think we've heard anecdotally their language change. Before it would just be all right, well, I think that one was, that one wasn't it, or whatever, but I remember the first time we did this, last year, a girl was leaving, she's like, I don't know, because recording was really too, because I had a lot of strings of sentences, but my text type was better in this one, and my communication strat, I was like, I didn't even know that you knew the language of the rubric. And then they walk out, and they're really reflecting on, the areas of the rubric, and not I think this is a 3 or I think this is a 2.
Oh,
72%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 72.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think their language has, or their mindset has shifted, but I mean, they're always just gonna want that.
100%.
I'm sorry, I do have one more question. In terms of the entire group, are you seeing consistency from one teacher in one section to the next? Have you looked at that data?
You should take a look at our group chat.
We should have done a screenshot of that.
I'm very fortunate to work with such wonderful people who are willing to put themselves out there, but then also respond to other people's questions. So our Spanish 3X team chat, people will upload videos and say hey, can somebody help me with this one? And so we calibrate that way in terms of interpersonals or interpretives or writings or whatever it is. And it's the combination of personalities and willingness to work and kind of be out there. But I think as a result of the calibration beforehand, the calibration, once we get the assessments together, I think the grade distribution would probably prove out that like we're very well calibrated.
Cool, thank you.
Absolutely, I can confirm that.
Question about, did you break out the data in terms of sort of stress levels around assessments with regard to your sophomores or your upperclassmen and your freshmen? Because you talked about how in 2-3, you're sort of moving towards this, so that's a softer transition. I'm just thinking about kids who are coming from our different center districts, different classroom cultures, and they're, you know, the youngins in the classroom, and how that might be compounded, also just adjusting to a totally different way of participating and self-assessing and being assessed. So does it look different with that section's worth of freshmen that you have in 3-4?
I don't think we've broken it down that way, but I mean, that's really interesting, because, I mean, I know like freshmen in their comments or in the surveys have been like, well, I don't really know anything else, so I'm pretty okay with it, I guess. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know, but that would be really interesting data though.
Like, so the way we collect the data, I don't think we can unless we
Ask them to indicate.
indicate their grade level. So in future.
Yeah.
in
Well,
future-
my other thought is just that hopefully by the time they've been here for a year plus, they've been more informed and more intentional around class selection. I feel like sometimes that first year, it all feels hard, or maybe they've gone for the most aggressive placements, you know? Not like I have twin 8th graders at home and have like course selection on the brain, sorry. But
Just asking for a friend.
Do a twin study, so.
So you talked about portfolios, that you collect all this work into a portfolio and then they go over it. Now, does that portfolio stay with the child as they move to the next level, the next class? So that they can then continue to build on it? Or is it just stay within Spanish 3-4?
Is next level is
The
AP
files
level?
themselves
Yes.
live
Yeah.
on, like digitally.
Yeah, so I think we're at the experimental stage right now, so we're really piloting this, the way in which we're doing it. And other teams are starting to, decide if they want to do a portfolio model with an interpersonal presentational. And it was important that all the teams decide how they want to do it, so that way we can see what works in like a really expedited way. So at the moment, nothing is very articulated that way, but the hope would be that in future years, we're aligned in such a way where a kid could go from, their first experience to their last experience and have their full body of work. But if we were to try to do something like that now, because we're still tinkering and messing with the dials, it could get really kind of haywire. So until it's something where it's programmatically solidified, like this is based on our experience, the best way to do an interpersonal portfolio, like I don't think that's gonna happen. So until we get to that.
So it stays there.
Yeah.
I mean, so it is digitally, like at the end of the year, we do it on an app called ClassKick. They could download it as a PDF and keep it and have all the files and their feedback and reflections. But what they do with that in the future wouldn't necessarily be what we do in 3-4, wouldn't necessarily translate to AP. But they could have it for themselves, ideally.
What I heard you say earlier, I think, in answer to Gary's question is, yes, kids are chasing grades, we're not changing that, but in doing so, they're doing it based on very specific skills and they're understanding the skills and where they need to go to get there, to get to the grade that they want. Is that any different in the last few years? Is that a bit of a shift also in terms of that type of thinking with the new ways of grading and all these other factors that have kind of played into this? Is that different?
I think you see them celebrate like their performances differently. So you get like more snippets of students like experiencing success and being happy because of the different experiences, like celebrating their language. So we historically, since I've been here, this is my 5th year, the framework has existed in terms of self-reflection, teacher feedback, peer feedback. But then the way that the students go about like analyzing their own work and then trying to improve upon it is this has kind of been the big evolution. So you'll see after a recording one day, like the kids are like, yeah, like they're like really excited for one. They're like, oh, do you mind if I use that one? Like, or like one parent might be kind of bummed, and the other like, it wasn't my best one. And the other student will be like, hey, I think I'm gonna use that because I really like this piece. And so there's a lot more like celebration of kind of like the interaction that they have with each other, like right immediately after a conversation, versus just, oh, we're gonna talk, we're gonna upload it and do my reflection and move on. That at least is something I see consistently across the
And I
board.
think something to add to that, which I think is really important too, in the original model, like, whoever your partner was for that particular conversation, that was it. That was it.
So sometimes you get the kid who doesn't talk at all, and sometimes you get the kid who doesn't stop talking, and you gotta.
But in this
Fight to get in
particular
there,
model, right, they've got 4 opportunities, so as Chris was saying, like some kids are super pumped about that conversation because the synergy was there, and everything lined up, whereas that's not always the case for everybody. So in terms of agency, in terms of the different metrics of student rapport, like this assessment is alleviating a lot of stress, or this process is alleviating a lot of stress for students, and it's creating a better environment for us all.
And I'd say like, Chris has brought this up like a lot, is because since they do 4 different conversations, you know, one kid could, you know, upload this conversation, but another kid uploads a conversation with that other kid, and you can hear, you're like, oh, you picked the right one. Like that one wasn't, that one
Yeah,
wasn't
you
your
did
best.
awful that day.
Yeah, like that one wasn't your best, and it's cool to be like, you didn't, you know, like you have they have the awareness of being like, this is the better one. This is
And they're only to get better at it as well. So I know from
Right.
having gone and done EBR a couple years ago when we first started doing that, the students learn the process. So I think as kids go from 2-3x doing this to us, that hurdle you get over is a lot faster because they understand the mechanics of the language, the feeling of it all.
Do you think that that's reflected in the increase in your belonging metrics?
I think the next data set will bring it out. Might be too soon. Next year. Next year, yeah.
Alright,
So
well, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Let's just ask one more question. So if you found that this is a good thing for students, that it improves whatever they're supposed to be improving, are you sharing this with the other language groups in your division?
It's
I mean,
actually
are
been,
people in French doing this, or
yes.
Chinese?
This has been a thread of our quarterly staff development for the past 2, 3
It was last
Last,
spring.
yeah, last spring.
This team actually presented to the division. We have our German teacher, Paulina, has been doing content-based portfolio for quite a while, and it's been fantastic. She has a portfolio presentation at the end of each semester. This team thought a little bit differently about it and thought of it through the realm of choice around assessment. And we really glommed onto that, and we're expanding it. Right now, as they mentioned, we're innovating. So we're working, there isn't really a model out there at the high school level for how this could work. There's not research that says this is very powerful, but in practice, there isn't much. So we're in the act right now of making that model for others. And yes, it's something we're committed to collectively, for sure.
Justin, are you saying there are no other high schools that are doing this, to your knowledge, that this kind of, that's astonishing to me. Is that true?
Yeah, and there are very few that use our grading system in general, and then beyond that, to give choice and assessment, you'll see it a little bit more at the university level, where there's a portfolio, you'll have a number of things you might turn in, and then you pick the one you want. And it's originally in the research, going back to the 90s in the world of English language development, ELL, it was a big thing to present portfolios, so that it started many years ago. It's not a new idea per se, but to use it in world languages in practice is really novel, surprisingly.
Interesting. Their portfolios in, say, fine arts, for instance, or
Yes.
English department, use portfolios, so in world languages.
Generally speaking, I think a lot of language programs are still kind of stuck in the grammar kind of focus, whereas.
Market, having a birthday party.
Exactly.
Right.
Whereas
That's what people do, right?
this group has really been focused on
The airport. You
they want
lost your
kids to be able
life.
to like actually speak the language, so you know, it's a different model altogether. Well, thank you guys so much, we appreciate you, great job.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You of course are welcome to stay, but this was the best part of the meeting, so we'll give you a minute to find your way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So who got married in the office? I saw the balloons. Who got married?
That was awesome.
Thanks, Justin.
Were we happy about that?
Yes, very happy about that.
Oh, thank you.
All right, here we go. Next item is our board policy updates. We did a first reading in December,
Yes, we
right?
did.
And so we're bringing this to you as, for your approval tonight. And it's press issue 113.
Okay, sorry. Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Who was that?
That was
Gary? That was
Tyler.
Don. Second,
Second.
thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for Eric on this one?
And just to remind you, I know you've probably taken a look at this, but, we've kind of categorized these, where, A and B are the ones that, P and I felt like, we really wanted to get some more information and dive in. For A, we've reached out to lawyers to make sure that we're on the right page. And for B, level B, those are things we also wanted you just to pay attention to. Everything else, you can either skim or ignore. But level A and B are the ones that we wanted you to be sure that you were comfortable with. And I would say that all of these are essentially this term required by law.
Yes.
So
Can I ask?
feel free to disagree, but you gotta do it anyway.
I don't
so.
have a disagreement, but I have a question about
Yeah.
one that you categorized as C. I'm just curious. Because I had to reread it several times to make sure that I think I understood it. How does a commemorative holiday get reflected in the school year? Is that something that happens in the classroom, or this is the footnote to the school year and calendar day about adding Constitution Day as a commemorative holiday? I just wanna understand what it means.
Yes,
Alright.
yes, it's put in there as a footnote, and I think it's one of those things where it's just duly noted,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like with anything with regards to the calendar, and obviously next year we're going to have the election day reflected as a.
Oh, no, sorry, now I understand your question. This is not reflected in our official school calendar.
The commemorative holiday is
Correct.
not.
Sorry, I misunderstood
Okay,
your question.
that's what I wanted to
Yeah,
understand.
no. There are many of those.
I know.
Yeah, those are not reflected in our official school calendar. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your
No,
question.
because I was
Yeah.
also does that have to be
No,
reflected in
no.
curriculum? Okay, good.
Those
Like
are,
I said, it was a C-list question.
most of those things fall upon our friends in the social studies department to make note of and highlight.
And great things to talk about
Yeah,
in social
totally.
studies anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
But it's not part of, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. It's not part of the official school calendar.
gotcha,
Yep.
thank you, sorry.
Yeah, no, good question.
I had another question about a C1. This deny future admission to athletic or extracurriculars. Are we talking students or are you talking about unruly visitors?
What policy?
830,
Visitors,
just generalized visitors.
Yes.
So if somebody is
anybody,
known to be unruly, they can be denied.
correct, yes.
Behave yourselves.
Behave yourself.
Mhm.
Troy will, Troy's the bouncer.
I've seen
If I behave myself.
it.
In the dog walker.
And
Yes.
one other question about the number 750 on the C, transfer to a regional safe school. Does that mean that we have expelled a student if they're transferred there, or is that sometimes a temporary
It's
move?
could be
when
a temporary
there's an
move.
issue.
Yeah, it's not an expulsion.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Terry, could you please pull the board?
It's a voice vote.
Oh, it's a voice vote, sorry.
It's okay.
All right, so all in favor to adopt the policies?
Aye.
Opposed?
Carries.
Okay, you'll see our personnel report includes our normal kind of selection of transfers and reassignments and resignations and hirings. So you can take a look at that. We will not need an executive, and that'll be approved in consent. We'll not need an executive session following the meeting. And for the first time in 17 years, I can't remember a night where Sean has nothing to say, so let's revel in that for just a hot minute and note that the remaining items are for consent, including destruction of closed session audio video recordings, release of executive session audio recordings, and the need for confidentiality for executive session minutes. All of those will be taken up under consent. You'll see our FOIA requests for this month, and that brings us to the consent agenda.
And just to clarify, the recordings, because it says voice vote next to all of those, but it's still okay.
It can be
They're-
part of
it's
consent,
part of
yeah,
consent.
yeah.
Okay, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have no idea who did this.
That was Ronnie and
Was
Don.
Ronnie? Thank you.
So could you please pull them up?
Certainly, Ben Joseph,
Yes.
Sal.
Here. Hi.
Corson.
Aye.
Good, Moons, aye, Tyre.
Aye.
No,
Aye.
it carries 6-0.
Okay, just some interesting notes here. We had a really great mid-year celebration honoring a whole smorgasbord of teachers and faculty, and Troy and Mark honored folks with Super Pats, and so you can see that nice list of folks that we were able to recognize there.
Including Matt, who happens to be here.
Including
so-
our very own Matt. Super Pat, yeah, that's right, the two-time winner.
Absolutely amazing work to get the PAC right.
Yeah, no kidding. Just thought you might be interested in the article, you may have seen it, The Misguided War on the SAT. I thought that presented
It's a great art.
a little bit different take on the whole do away with college admissions testing. I thought that was interesting. I just thought you would also be interested in our, we have so many athletic programs. I think I've shared with you before that there's only a handful of Division I colleges who have athletic programs bigger than ours. We have well over 2,500 athletes, Troy, I forget the exact number, 40-something sports, all these different levels.
Over 200 coaches.
Over 200 coaches. And now, over the past couple of years, we have a girls wrestling program. That is one of our fastest growing sports. They're doing an amazing job. I sent you a picture earlier today, the girls wrestling in the field house. Absolutely fantastic, so kudos to Trish and our coaches for creating that opportunity. And so you can see an article I included there as well around girls wrestling in the United States and kind of the equity challenges and opportunities that it provides. I hope that we're fulfilling our expectation and commitment to equity. So that's just a note of interest. I also shared with you a list of important dates. P and I put this together over the past few days. This is beyond a draft, maybe not totally final. Things of course change, but it's here linked, but we also gave you a hard copy. I know that some of you like to have it in your hands. All of these dates will be put on our Google Calendar, but we also wanted you to have a hard copy. You know I usually provide this for you right around this time, so you know what's coming up in the spring and summer. I just want you to, part of the reason I'm pointing this out is I would love for you to go to the back page, and I just want you to note that our very own version of well, I can't say it out loud in a public meeting, but Heck Week is May 20th to May 24th, right? So we have, this is usual, right? We usually do this past 16 years. We have our board meeting on Monday, we have admin reviews on Tuesday, and then we have graduation on Friday. So it's a big week, but we'd like to get it all done, get it over with. So
Send out the calendar.
plan accordingly. We will have good food, and the opportunity to be together. And that's it, that's all we have. We're hoping Troy's gonna make sure it doesn't rain and snow tonight, so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Troy, we appreciate it.
I got it covered.
I don't know. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.